Well, maybe I should say that the struggle or the Bush War was a result of the election which was held in 1980.
We had formed a small party, Uganda Patriotic Movement, to oppose the classically sectarian parties of DP for Catholics, UPC for Protestants. We said the people of Uganda should unite, irrespective of their religious affiliations.
UPM participated against the UPC and the DP, and which we lost, of course. But after that, I think Museveni and several of us, colleagues, had made it very clear during the elections that should UPC or Obote cheat in the election, then there will be a war to try and unseat the government. This was not taken very seriously, of course, by Obote, because they thought that in Africa, the question of unseating a government was not possible, because it had not happened before, and they thought it was not going to happen for the first time.
In this struggle, I got engaged with it mainly when I was a secondary school student.
Oh, okay.
And then later on we continued.
Well, Museveni had made it very clear, even without the knowledge of many people in the UPM, that he would organize the launching of a war should this election be cheated. And after the elections, Museveni started mobilizing some fighters. And I came in because we discussed where the war should be launched from. Okay. The 27 we are talking about. Yes. And we agreed that it should be done at my house in Makindye. Okay. This was a clandestine act, and even people in UPM did not know about it until it had been launched. So, if you want to hear more about that, once we had agreed that it should be done at my house in Makindye, I evacuated my family, that's my wife and children, and quietly sent them off to Nairobi, where I had a home because I had worked there. And then Museveni started collecting the Bush War fighters, the 27, as they are called, to come to my house. It was done over a period of about 3 days. Okay. And I was there just alone with my driver. And they cleared the house, created a small barracks in my garage. And they came in small groups, 2, 3, 4, over the next 2-3 days, until everybody of the 27 was there. We had somebody who had been selected to be the driver of the vehicle which had been obtained, which was parked in my compound. And when the day came, they drove off to Kabamba about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It was a question of real logistics. Okay. First of all, people who was willing to do that. This was a big risk. You remember that Obote was in power, and here was a group of people collecting at Matthew Rukikaire's home, which was really an act of treason, as you can imagine. If we had been found out before or after, what was the punishment of treason? It's hanging. So one, it was a question of who is willing to take the risk. And the other one was naturally the question of the best place, the best hiding place. Makindye's location is a good location. Even if you go there, you find that it is, although it is in Kampala, it's like a village. A lot of trees and a lot of space and quiet. So I think those were two considerations. Well, my children were very young, so the children really were not aware of what was happening. The only thing they were aware of is that we had arranged to take them to Nairobi. But I had to discuss it with my wife and agree about the evacuation of the children and herself to Nairobi. Also for her to give consent that this risk should be taken. And when she agreed, then I went back to Museveni and said, we have decided as a family that we can use this venue for this task.
My family supported the line I took, yes, and I was very happy about that. When the elections were rigged, Yoweri Museveni led a team of young people to attack Kabamba, and the government of the day, the regime of the day, was moving, looking for anybody who was suspected to be opposed to the regime, or who was, for that matter, associated with Yoweri Museveni or even Uganda Patriotic Movement.
As soon as they left for Kabamba, within the next 24 hours, I also evacuated from the house because of the dangers.
Yeah. So that's why we found it better that instead of waiting for the regime to pick us, we took cover in Nairobi and we continued with our work, support the efforts for national liberation.
Well, fortunately, I had a home in Nairobi because I've told you that I was working for Shell BP. I had bought a house in Nairobi, and that's where my children and my sister moved to. So we lived in our own house when I went to Nairobi and started preparing to launch a campaign worldwide about the starting of a war to unseat Obote and the government from power.
This was the external committee of the National Resistance Movement. So the external committee, many people may not know, was led by Matthew Rukikaire. We often call him chairman. Even now we call him chairman because he was a very effective chairman of the external committee and had many other people like Njuba, Tumusime, James, Ruaka Koko, Aneska Kwano, Mama Mbabazi, Kionga, Abu Mayanja, Sulaiman Chigundu, Ndugu Obina. So there were quite a number of young people. I'm mentioning the names of the men, but there were many active women like Aliska Kwano and many others who were really playing a very, very, very active role. What was their work? Their work mainly was to sensitize the population, both Ugandans and non-Ugandans, about the struggle in Uganda. And occasionally to link up with the people in the bush and also to receive some of the people in the bush who would come to Nairobi for different reasons, political, military, or for that matter, medical. Yeah, so it was some kind of backup team, and we were also publishing the Resistance News. The Resistance News was mainly published by Ndugu Kirunda Kivejinja and Ivas Kabahucha was the secretary, and they did great work. James Tumusime was in charge of information. I even edited and published a book about the National Resistance Movement. So many different people in different ways played important roles. Many of these roles were handled quietly. Some of them were handled publicly. But many different people played their roles very well. Shemu Bagene was one of those people who we found living in Kenya, and he was one of those who was keeping money for the external committee. So I commend that team mainly based in Kenya, but in the diaspora in general, for having remained steadfast in their support for the struggle at home, in the bush, and for the country.
Not only that, but of course we had a few other things we had to do. Because shortly after that, I can't remember whether it's 1 month or 2 months or 3, Museveni came over to Nairobi. And we proceeded to Tripoli, Libya. Muammar Gaddafi had invited us when he knew that a group of youngsters had started a revolution, as he called it, and he invited us to go to Tripoli and discuss with him the possibility of providing us with arms.
What you saw as a victory in 1986 was a culmination of not only the 5-year armed struggle in the bush led by President Yoweri Museveni, but was really a culmination of many more years of building up, deepening consciousness of mainly the young people, showing them what was wrong in our system, and letting them know, empowering them to know that we, the people of Uganda, and especially the young people of Uganda, can do something radical about it to transform it for the better.